running and slides for a first down. Steve deceptively fast.
But he looked really fast on there and surprised some guys, getting down, taking what the defense gives them. Look, this is what you want to see from your young rookie.
We wanted to address our front of our defense to stop the run.
Off the play fake, Shedeur Sanders into the traffic.
The NFL just got a harsh reality check. The moment Shedeur Sanders stepped off the field, ticket prices nosedived nearly 70% and TV ratings were cut in half compared to just weeks earlier. For a league that prides itself on stability, one rookie quarterback has exposed just how fragile that balance can be. Ticket resale markets dropped by almost 70% the moment Shedeur Sanders was ruled out. And that number isn't just a talking point, it's the clearest signal of how much gravity this rookie quarterback already carries. A matchup that had been sold out weeks in advance suddenly had entire sections available on secondary markets for barely above face value. Local Cleveland vendors saw the ripple effect immediately, with estimates that bar reservations for game day fell by nearly a third compared to the Sanders debut game earlier this summer. What makes this so striking is not just the collapse in ticket demand, but how tightly it correlates with national TV numbers, which fell off by close to 50% the same weekend he sat. For context, preseason or regular season, networks almost never see swings that dramatic without a weather delay or complete blowout. Yet in this case, the only missing factor was Sanders himself. From a broadcast perspective, the Cleveland game in question pulled roughly 4.8 million viewers on its local and national affiliates. That's a steep drop from the 9.1 million who tuned in for Sanders' first NFL start. A loss of 4.3 million viewers in 1 week doesn't just happen without cause. Nielsen data shows that the most engaged demo men ages 18 to 34 vanished by almost 60% once Sanders wasn't listed as active. That's the exact demographic the NFL relies on to sustain long-term streaming growth, and losing them for even a single week signals a much larger risk. Streaming platforms tell a similar story. Amazon's Thursday Night Football stream saw concurrent viewership peak 1.2 million lower than the previous week. Even YouTube TV's dedicated NFL Sunday Ticket package recorded a noticeable dip in single game buys, with analysts suggesting Sanders' absence may have cost the league anywhere from $6 to $8 million in just one broadcast cycle. It's not just the screens where the numbers tell the story. The secondary ticket market gives us perhaps the most raw and unfiltered measurement of demand. Before Sanders' debut, lower bowl seats in Cleveland were commanding resale averages between $340 and $380, often triple face value. The night he was scratched, those same seats could be had for $95, and in some cases, sellers couldn't even unload them. One reseller, speaking anonymously to a local paper, admitted he lost nearly $12,000 in projected profit margin because he had stockpiled tickets assuming Sanders would start. That's not an isolated story. It's the type of shift that puts fear into both the Browns front office and the league's business partners. From a team operations standpoint, the collapse in audience interest presents a two-pronged challenge. First, it robs Cleveland of a national showcase, and second, it eliminates valuable reps for their young quarterback under the eyes of fans, analysts, and coaches. Kevin Stefanski now has less usable film of Sanders working with first-team receivers and protections. Without those snaps, the evaluation process slows down, and that matters when a franchise is trying to justify its entire future on one player. The NFL, for its part, is built around the idea that star power translates to ratings, but rarely does the effect show up this immediate and this severe. Leagues often talk about needle movers. Sanders, after just a few games, has proved he isn't just moving the needle, he is the needle. Consider how odd the contrast looks when stacked against other quarterbacks in the same situation. CJ Stroud's first preseason last year bumped Houston's local TV ratings by 22%, but if Stroud sat a game, those numbers dipped by maybe 5-7%. Nothing catastrophic. Trevor Lawrence's rookie campaign in Jacksonville produced ticket spikes of about 15% compared to 2020's empty pandemic crowds, but a missed start didn't crater demand. Sanders' case is different. A 70% ticket resale collapse is almost unheard of. It suggests a fan base, both local and national, is tuning in specifically for him, not just for Cleveland football. That's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it validates the hype. Sanders brings the celebrity aura, the Colorado carryover fan base, and the social media generation's curiosity into NFL stadiums. On the other hand, it leaves both the Browns and the league at risk of being exposed when he isn't available. The immediate consequence is obvious: short-term money lost. But the longer-term issue runs deeper. If TV partners begin to fear that ratings are entirely tied to one rookie's availability, they may demand flex protections, restructured contracts, or altered primetime scheduling to protect their investment. Networks like Fox and CBS don't want to see a 50% drop overnight, because that undermines the value of billion-dollar broadcast deals. The betting markets confirm the same trend. Sportsbooks in Vegas and New Jersey reported that Browns-related prop bets fell by nearly half the moment Sanders was scratched. Even straight win-loss bets on the game dropped 38% week over week. The American Gaming Association estimated that the missed Sanders start wiped out somewhere near $25 million in total handle across all platforms nationwide, most of which would have been tied to player props like passing yards, completions, and touchdowns. For a league that has embraced gambling as a major revenue stream, that type of fluctuation is significant. No executive wants to see millions evaporate simply because one player isn't active. Nationally, Sanders' absence altered the narrative flow of the entire NFL weekend. Talk shows that usually lead Monday segments with Browns highlights instead pivoted to cover other matchups, leaving Cleveland without a media footprint. ESPN's Get Up, which devoted its first 22 minutes to Sanders' debut game earlier in the season, gave the Browns just 94 seconds of coverage after his absence. Social media numbers paralleled that decline. Sanders-related hashtags, which had trended top 3 during his starts, didn't crack the top 15 the week he sat. For a league chasing social-first engagement with Gen Z fans, that's a red flag. All of this brings the discussion back to one unavoidable point. The NFL is seeing in real time what happens when its new marketing engine sputters. Attendance fell, resale collapsed, ratings halved, gambling volume shrank, and sponsorship chatter cooled. Those are 5 critical revenue streams all disrupted in 1 week. The immediate consequences are measurable. The financial impact is undeniable, and the question now becomes whether this was a one-off or the beginning of a trend that reshapes how the league treats rookie stars. The numbers alone would be enough to raise alarms, but the bigger story is why this all matters right now. Shedeur Sanders isn't just another rookie quarterback adjusting to the NFL. For Cleveland, he represents the first legitimate shot in decades at combining star power with genuine quarterback potential, and losing him, even for a short window, has immediate consequences not just for the franchise, but for the NFL as a whole. For Kevin Stefanski and the Browns coaching staff, every snap Sanders misses is a lost opportunity to evaluate him under game conditions. Quarterbacks don't develop in empty practice reps, they develop when facing live pressure, when defenses disguise coverages, and when timing with receivers is forced to sharpen in real time. Sanders sitting out eliminates film that would otherwise help coaches identify whether he is picking up blitz adjustments, whether he can throw receivers open against press coverage, and how quickly he processes reads when defenses rotate safeties late. Coaches aren't just missing a game, they're missing data that is crucial when the front office is planning free agency, offensive scheme tweaks, or even draft investments in future years. On the field, the ripple effect is glaring. When Sanders starts, the Browns' offense looks entirely different. Even in his first few games, the ball came out faster, the pace was higher, and defenses had to account for explosive throws downfield. In those games, Cleveland averaged 27.6 points per contest, nearly a touchdown more than their 2023 season average. Without him, that number fell back down to 18.1, a regression that exposes the lack of rhythm with backup quarterbacks. That's not a small drop, it's a swing that changes playoff math. In the AFC North, where games are decided by 3 to 5 points on average, that 9-point differential is the difference between a division title and missing the postseason entirely. From a locker room standpoint, players feel the shift. Veteran receivers like Amari Cooper thrive on chemistry with quarterbacks, and every game without Sanders is another week lost in building that connection. Offensive linemen, too, are adjusting protections differently depending on whether Sanders is at quarterback. When he's there, they can trust his pocket movement and quicker release. Without him, protection calls are slower, sacks increase, and morale dips. These are subtle dynamics, but they add up quickly over a 17-game season. If Sanders is going to be the long-term franchise cornerstone, then every delay in that developmental curve sets Cleveland back years. For the league, the timing couldn't be worse. The NFL has been strategically pushing younger, flashier stars into national windows, hoping to capture the same viral energy that has worked in college football and even in the NBA. Sanders is a perfect fit for that initiative, son of Dion. Massive social media following, proven college draw, and the charisma to engage casual fans. Losing him for even 1 week forces the NFL to reckon with its dependence on his presence. This isn't about whether the Browns can still grind out a win with a backup quarterback. It's about whether fans will tune in at all. And the week-to-week numbers say many won't. The sponsorship side makes that clear. Reports out of Cleveland suggest that 2 corporate partners, both in beverage and apparel categories, have already started recalculating activation campaigns based on Sanders' availability. One local sponsor who had tied a year-long campaign around Saturdays with Shedeur crossover branding admitted their projections dipped by 40% for any game Sanders doesn't play. That's an unheard of dependency for a rookie quarterback. Normally, sponsors diversify their messaging around entire franchises, not individual players. Yet in this case, Sanders has already become the sole marketing draw. From the perspective of national TV partners, Sanders' absence is forcing conversations in real time. Executives at CBS and Fox are under pressure when the Browns fall into prime slots. A 50% drop in ratings isn't just bad optics, it's damaging to ad revenue. At an average of $650,000 per 30-second ad slot for NFL broadcasts, losing millions of viewers translates directly into advertisers demanding refunds or make goods. Analysts estimate that one missed Sanders start could cost networks between $8 and $12 million in lost ad value. Stretch that over multiple weeks, and the ripple becomes seismic. Networks plan months in advance for which games will anchor their weekly slates. If the Sanders factor proves too volatile, the NFL might be forced to adjust flex scheduling rules just to guarantee rating stability. And then there's the fan element. Browns fans are some of the most loyal in football, but even they've shown their breaking point when it comes to paying premium prices without Sanders on the field. Social media posts from fans show frustration at paying hundreds for seats only to watch a backup quarterback deliver a flat performance. One fan wrote, "I didn't buy these tickets for Cleveland football, I bought them for Shedeur football." While anecdotal, that sentiment is spreading quickly, and it highlights a dangerous reality. Fans are no longer buying into the shield itself, they're buying into individual personalities. That shift matters because it challenges the very foundation of NFL branding. For decades, the league has promoted the concept that the team is bigger than the player. That's why names on jerseys are smaller than the logos on helmets. But Sanders' impact is cutting against that grain. He is not just another Browns quarterback, he's become the show. The risk is that the NFL could be creating a new model, one where individual absences trigger collapses in demand that the team brand can't absorb. In the short term, the Browns face a practical problem: how to keep momentum alive if Sanders misses extended time. They've already seen local ticket demand fall by nearly 3/4 in 1 week. If that trend repeats, you're talking about thousands of empty seats in a stadium that had been sold out for months. That's a visible embarrassment for a franchise finally clawing back national relevance. It's also a potential trigger for financial penalties, as the NFL has minimum thresholds for local attendance that clubs are expected to meet. While the Browns won't face those penalties yet, the margin for error is shrinking. The urgency is amplified by the AFC landscape. Teams like Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Kansas City have entrenched star quarterbacks who will dominate headlines and ratings whether Sanders plays or not. If the Browns can't keep Sanders on the field, they risk being completely invisible in the national conversation. And invisibility in the NFL translates directly into lost revenue, declining fan bases, and difficulty attracting free agents. Players follow money and exposure, and if Cleveland can't guarantee either, they'll struggle to compete in both roster building and branding. This is why the Sanders situation matters now, not months from now. Every week without him is costing Cleveland millions in direct revenue, costing the NFL tens of millions in lost ad and gambling value, and slowing down the one quarterback who could finally bring the franchise into national relevance. The team is essentially caught in a race against time. Keep Sanders on the field and keep fans engaged, or risk losing both in the blink of an eye. The clearest way to understand just how unusual Shedeur Sanders' impact has been is to put it alongside past quarterbacks who carried similar hype. The NFL has seen waves of young passers arrive with massive expectations, but the data shows that even the most hyped debuts rarely produce the type of measurable collapse we're now seeing when Sanders isn't on the field. Start with the Tim Tebow era. Back in 2011, Denver became a ratings magnet overnight once Tebow took over mid-season. The famous overtime playoff win against the Steelers drew 42.4 million viewers, the highest for a wildcard game in 24 years. But when Tebow didn't play, the Broncos still held steady at around 18 to 19 million viewers nationally. Ticket resale demand dipped slightly when he was benched, but never more than 15%. Compare that to Sanders' absence this season. Cleveland saw resale markets collapse by nearly 70% in a single week, and national ratings cut in half. Even Tebomania never triggered that kind of economic whiplash. Johnny Manziel offers another instructive comparison. When the Browns drafted him in 2014, his first preseason game drew a 36% spike in local TV ratings, and ticket demand surged, especially on the road where fans wanted to see the spectacle. But once he was benched, attendance and ratings dropped by no more than 10-12%. Manziel was a polarizing figure, but the business impact of his absence was marginal compared to what Cleveland is seeing now with Sanders. The difference is stark. Manziel was hype without substance, while Sanders carries both hype and performance potential. The league recognizes this distinction, and that's why his absence feels more costly. Look at Lamar Jackson's rookie rise in 2018. When Lamar replaced Joe Flacco midseason, Baltimore's local TV numbers jumped by 28%, and home ticket sales improved by roughly 20% on the secondary market. Fans wanted to see his electrifying play style, but in games he didn't start, those figures dipped back toward average levels. They didn't implode. The Ravens never saw a 50% ratings decline or a 3/4 ticket collapse. Sanders' absence doesn't just reduce interest, it detonates it. Patrick Mahomes is perhaps the closest example of a quarterback shifting economic gravity, but even he didn't produce this scale of effect as a rookie. In 2017, Mahomes sat almost the entire season behind Alex Smith, only starting in week 17. Ratings and ticket demand in Kansas City were steady, buoyed by the team's playoff contention. Once Mahomes became the starter in 2018, Chiefs ratings skyrocketed. Fox saw a 31% jump in primetime viewership compared to the prior season. But again, when he missed a few games in 2019 due to injury, Kansas City's numbers dipped by around 20%, not the catastrophic 50% we're seeing in Cleveland without Sanders. What this tells us is that Sanders' effect is not just strong, it's outsized for a rookie. In historical terms, no other quarterback has created a demand gap this severe in such a short window. Normally, it takes years of elite play, MVP awards, or Super Bowl runs before a player becomes so indispensable to both business and ratings. Sanders has done it before he's even fully established himself as a starter. Another layer of comparison comes from college football. In 2022, when Deion Sanders and Shedeur transformed Colorado into a national storyline, ratings followed instantly. Colorado's upset over TCU in the season opener drew 7.3 million viewers, Fox's most watched early season game in decades. A week later, their game against Nebraska brought in 8.7 million, outdrawing several NFL games that weekend. When Colorado lost Shedeur briefly to injury that year, ratings for the subsequent game dropped by nearly 40%. The pattern was already visible in college, and it's now carrying into the NFL, but on a far larger financial stage. Consider also the comparison to Andrew Luck's arrival in 2012. Luck was heralded as a generational prospect, and Indianapolis saw immediate bumps. Season ticket renewals jumped by 12%, and national ratings for Colts games rose by 25% compared to the Peyton Manning-less year before. But again, when Luck missed games due to injury, Indy's numbers held relatively steady. Fans were loyal to the franchise as much as the quarterback. That loyalty seems thinner in Cleveland today, where the evidence suggests fans are explicitly attaching themselves to Sanders, not the Browns logo. The contrast extends beyond football too. Think about Zion Williamson in the NBA. When Zion debuted for the Pelicans, ratings surged 73% on ESPN compared to New Orleans' prior average. But when Zion was sidelined, New Orleans numbers dropped by about 40%. That's the closest parallel to Sanders' one player whose presence or absence controls nearly the entire business trajectory of his franchise. The difference is the NFL is a $20 billion a year juggernaut, not a small market NBA team. A 50% drop in ratings here isn't just a talking point, it's billions at risk over time. What's striking in every one of these comparisons is how much larger the Sanders effect appears. Tebow created buzz, but he was polarizing. Manziel created headlines, but not staying power. Lamar created excitement, but his absence never tanked the numbers. Mahomes became the face of the league, but only after years of success. Sanders, by contrast, has compressed all of that into a few games. His absence has become the single largest differentiator between record-high engagement and near silence. This also raises a broader question about how sustainable this model is for the NFL. In past eras, the Shield itself was the product. Fans tuned in for Packers-Bears, Cowboys-Niners, or Steelers-Ravens, no matter who was under center. But now, with Sanders, it appears the individual star is overtaking the brand. That's much more in line with how the NBA markets itself, where LeBron James or Stephen Curry drive national numbers independent of team. If the NFL is entering that territory, Sanders may be the test case. And that represents both opportunity and danger. The opportunity is obvious. With Sanders healthy and playing, the NFL can unlock record-setting ratings, sellouts, and viral attention that stretches beyond its normal audience. The danger is equally obvious. Without him, the floor falls out. No other rookie in league history has carried that kind of weight this fast, and history suggests very few ever will.